The man charged with the murder of MP Jo Cox appears in court, giving his name as Death to Traitors, Freedom for Britain. Meanwhile, her family paid tribute. She was someone who only ever saw the good.
We know that there are some evil people in this world, but there are an awful lot of good people too. She was a human being, and she was perfect. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Good evening. Our family is broken, but we will never let Jo leave our lives. The sister of Jo Cox today, speaking as members of her family, visited the memorial to the MP in Birstall. She thanked all those whose sympathy and love had helped them through dark times. The man accused of her murder was remanded in custody today after a brief court appearance. Live now to our Home Affairs correspondent Darshna Soni, who's in Birstall. Darshna.
There are still many people turning up here to pay their respects, to leave tributes to Jo Cox. And of all the messages that have been left, many speak of things like unity, of love triumphing over hate. And I think it's very telling that all the people who have come are from all different backgrounds, from all faiths and none. One of the families that I spoke to who turned up today said that they wanted to share the burden of grief that had been placed on Jo Cox's family. And yet, remarkably, when her family came here today, they said they wanted to support everybody else in the community. They wanted to offer their support to those who had loved the MP. Her sister gave a very powerful speech. Her words were simple and yet humbling, and many of us listening were moved to tears. And she spoke on the day that just a few hours earlier, a man had appeared in court at Westminster Magistrates charged with murdering the MP here on Thursday. They came, they said, because they wanted to focus on that which unites us and not which divides us. Jo Cox's father, her mother and sister.
There are some things in life you should never have to do. Last night I had to go and identify my sister's body. Yes, this was Jo Cox MP, and she was many things to many people in her too short life. But she was my sister, my only sibling, my parents' firstborn child, a wife and a mum.
In their grief, they reached out to comfort others with their humbling words.
From a very young age, all Jo ever wanted was for everyone to be happy. She only saw the good. We know that there are some evil people in this world, but there are an awful lot of good people too.
They had gathered near the spot where the MP had been killed. And this morning, the man accused of her murder appeared before Westminster Magistrates Court. It was a short but dramatic hearing. When 52-year-old Thomas Mair was asked to state his name, he replied, "Death to traitors, freedom for Britain." The prosecution said that when he was arrested, Mr. Mair had told police he was a political activist. Jo Cox was killed outside her constituency office. As she lay dying, she was cradled by her assistant, Fazila Aswad, who was among those who came today to support the family and read the tributes.
We have to continue this strength and solidarity in the days, months and years to come, as part of Jo's legacy. And to focus on, as Jo would say, that which unites us and not which divides us. For now, our family is broken, but we will mend over time, and we will never let Jo leave our lives. She will live on through all the good people in the world, through Brendan, through us, and through her truly wonderful children, who will always know what an utterly amazing woman their mother was.
A fund that has been set up in memory of Jo Cox has already received donations of nearly £500,000. Her family say the money will be used to fight for the better world that the MP so passionately believed in.
She was a human being, and she was perfect. Thank you.
Thanks again.
Well, politics as usual remains suspended out of respect for Jo Cox. But on the sidelines, the debate over Brexit has continued. Another warning today from the IMF over the risk of recession. And France claimed that Britain outside Europe would be about as influential as Guernsey. Harry Smith joins us now live from Westminster. Harry.
Well, you join me here in Parliament Square, where all day people have been leaving flowers, as you can see, in tribute to Jo Cox. Members of the public, some of her fellow MPs, now under normal circumstances, they would be busy campaigning in that referendum with so few days to go before they vote. But as you said, normal campaigning has been suspended. However, the arguments haven't stopped. We had, for example, today a report from the International Monetary Fund suggesting that if Britain voted to leave the European Union, Britain's economic growth would suffer to the tune of 5.6% by 2019. Now, the Vote Leave campaigns say that's nonsense. They say the IMF is simply not taking into account the growth that would be created by Britain leaving the European Union and the many deals that they could do, trade deals with countries around the world. Now, also, we're about to hear the first poll taken around the time that Jo Cox was shot dead. In fact, it's a poll that was actually taken on the day, and it's interesting in that those questioned before news of the poll of the shooting broke, they said apparently that 45% were saying that they would be delighted if Britain voted to leave the European Union, and only 27% saying they would be delighted if Britain voted to remain. Now, a number who were questioned after news broke, the gap narrows quite considerably, but it has to be stressed this is a very small sample and it is only one poll. Now, campaigning resumes tomorrow, but we can't say it's going to be anything like business as usual. Parliament has been recalled on Monday to pay tributes to Jo Cox. One MP has already said that they should break with normal tradition and sit all together rather than on separate sides of the House of Commons, so they can show that they're united in grief and united in admiration for an MP who achieved so much, although she was only a member of the House of Commons for just over a year.
Harry Smith, thanks very much from Westminster. 3 Belgians have been charged with an attempt to commit terrorist offences after a major anti-terror operation across Belgium. Another 9 people who had been arrested in the overnight raids have been released. The Belgian Prime Minister said the country would remain extremely vigilant hour by hour and promised that security would be stepped up at public events. It was, he said, the best ride I've been on ever. Major Tim Peake, as he landed back on Earth after 6 months in space, describing his time in orbit as a life-changing experience. His capsule plunged more than 250 miles through space before landing in Kazakhstan on a cushion of fire. Simeon Brown reports.
Ground control to Major Tom. Ground control to Major Tom.
Well, more accurately, ground control to Major Tim. When he went up, David Bowie was still alive. After 186 days, an estimated 3,000 orbits around the Earth, covering a distance of 125 million kilometers, Major Tim Peake is on his way home. His journey back began when his capsule broke away from the International Space Station. It fell through the Earth's atmosphere up to 25 times faster than the speed of sound before parachuting to the ground with a bumpy landing in Kazakhstan.
Tim Peake and Yuri Malenchenko are back on Earth after 186 days in space.
Major Peake said this was the best ride of his life.
Just truly elated. I mean, just the smells of Earth are so strong.
To many, Major Peake's 6-month odyssey became a one-man reality show through his live broadcasts. We watched him run the London Marathon remotely.
Congratulations to the incredible Adele. She's taken the world by storm and is a true global icon.
From up in the stars, he presented a Brit Award to Britain's biggest star.
Thank you, darlings.
The bubble's nice and close to the camera so I can show you. Here we go. And I'll pop it in.
And he taught us how to do chemistry experiments in space.
And there you can see the bubble is starting to grow. All of the gas is being released. but all it's doing is it's making that bubble of water get bigger and bigger, and you can see it fizzing up there.
But he also made history as the first UK astronaut to make a spacewalk.
Yeah, Tim, that's perfect framing right there. We like that.
Now Major Peake has to adjust to walking back on land.
Feeling a lot of dizziness and vertigo at the moment anytime I move my head, which is to be expected. That's normal after 6 months in space.
With the new crew on the space station, Major Peake's expedition is over. He's back on Earth as the astronaut who became a star.
Simeon Brown reporting there. Rugby now, and England have pulled off a historic series win in Australia after beating Melbourne by 23-7. Our sports reporter Jordan Jarrett Bryan watched the action.
The second test in Australia, England fancied making history. Melbourne the setting for part 2. The visitors were less slick and more solid as they frustrated their bitter rivals and eventually bundled their way over the line with the first try from Dylan Hartley. Owen Farrell allowed England to believe when he extended their lead. Australia hit back. One of the rare occasions brute force was too much for England, Stephen Moore giving the Wallabies a bounce. England and Farrell turned to game management, deciding to maintain a healthy lead. Australia pushed and probed, but this new-look England defence is not for turning, and the icing on the cake came when Farrell capped a fine performance.
Farrell, it's the series. It's going to be the series, I think.
It took an Australian to coach England to make history with the first series win in Australia, making the future for the national team look very exciting.
Football and Belgium have beaten the Republic of Ireland, leaving the Irish in danger of being knocked out of Euro 2016. Everton striker Romelu Lukaku gave the Belgians the lead in the Group E match in Bordeaux. That's it from us. We're back tomorrow at 6:30. Until then, that's Channel 4 News. Good evening.